I do want to say a word about our friend Bill Brady. I don't know if y'all have heard that Bill Brady passed away this weekend. He was a lobbyist. He testified in our committees a few times, and K-12 certainly quite a bit. He was a very good man. All he asked for was a little communication. We've had many conversations about many bills, and this past Thursday, over at his office, when they did a little reception, when I had my daughters with me, he was very kind to them, and they sat there. We all ate pizza together and just had a good conversation. And so it was kind of a gut punch this morning to find out that Bill had passed over the weekend. So I just wanted to mention how good of a man he was, and I didn't know if you'd all heard that, but certainly we want to be praying for his family and everybody close to him. But he was a good man, and it was a pleasure to work with him. So that being said, we do have some work to do this afternoon. So if you all will open Senate Bill 13, the sports broadcasting bill. Jason, if you wouldn't mind giving us a brief overview of that again, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 13 is a bill that would require the Kansas State High School Athletics Association to, if it enters into or renews any exclusive broadcast agreement for regular season or postseason activities, then such agreement cannot prohibit local broadcasters from broadcasting a school's regular season or postseason activity if those local broadcasters abide by some of the provisions that are included in the bill. Those provisions include provide broadcast services for the school that is participating in the activity, broadcast at least 1/3 of the events of such activity during the regular season, and enter into a valid broadcast agreement to broadcast the events of the activity during that regular season. There's also some provisions that would allow the association to require those local broadcasters to agree to certain stipulations, including reasonable compensation for a video broadcast, approval by the host site, and limitations on organizations that are permitted to sponsor part of the broadcast, or requirements for competent and professional announcers during those broadcasts. The bill would go into effect on July 1 of this year, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
First things first, I want to welcome our guest today. Representative Titus is filling in for us, Representative Wynn, Representative Dennis Miller, because we have so many Millers, we got to use first names. Representative Hoheisel is also filling in, and then Representative Weigel. Just want to welcome them to our always exciting and always full of energy committee. With that committee, I do have an amendment. The 4 words that everybody loves to hear in a committee, right? So, Jason, if you would. And let me briefly explain it. Current CASIA rules, there are postseason fees of $0 for audio and $200 for streaming broadcasts. Those are rules that CASIA has adopted. In the bill itself, it talks about reasonable fees. And so what we're simply doing is we are codifying current CASIA policy in this bill. That way, we don't have to determine, or they're not left to determine what a reasonable fee is. We can just say we're going to go with what current CASIA policy already is. Did I get that about right, Jason?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, committee, discussion on the amendment. Representative Silas Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we discussed what the fees, like, were the fees way over that $200 limit that you're talking about before, or is this is just to kind of streamline it with CASIA policy?
Right, we're just streamlining CASIA policy. In the bill, it just says can charge reasonable fees. So the concern is when you've got a 1A or a 2A school district, reasonable to them, and a multi-million-dollar national corporation that has 47 national clients, we're probably going to mean 2 different things.
Okay. And so establishing an audio-only free option for people who still want to.
That's correct.
Awesome, thank you.
Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at this, I would like to make a conceptual amendment to your amendment.
Okay.
And that would basically say that the Kansas State High School Activities Association shall emit all revenues or fees received for broadcast agreements to the Kansas State General Fund.
We might need to reword that or restate that so we can write that down, because that would be a substitute motion to this amendment, if I remember correctly.
So I am adding to your amendment that the monies that will receive from all of the CASHA funds revenues would go into the Kansas State General Fund, because the state of Kansas, through our state general funds, are supporting the high schools and the schools. So our revenue is paying for their fees that the high schools are paying them. And if there's any revenue this is generated, I think that that should also go to the high school or back to the Kansas State funds, general fund.
Jason Long.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I do not believe that the Kansas State High School Activities Association is a state agency in that it is subject and receives appropriations from the state. So to do this, it would have to remit those monies to the state treasurer, which then could credit them to the state general fund. I do not know what these fees are used for by the State Activities Association, however, and they are not provided appropriations from the state general fund.
Well, Mr. Chair, indirectly, that might be true, and I don't have any problem with stating that going to the treasurer to be accredited to the state general fund. That's a technicality. But again, they are receiving money from the high schools to do their job. Now they're receiving additional revenues for this fee that they're creating to do these tournaments and everything. And I just really feel that they are making money off of us, off of our high schools that we are supporting. You need a second for that?
I will need a second, but I would like, could we restate it with the language that the treasurer has, unless we already have that written down and the language verified?
To the treasurer?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the amendment, as I understand the substitute motion, would be to take the amendment that you see before us, but add language in the bill that would direct the association to remit all monies from such fees to the state treasurer to be credited to the state general fund.
That sounds correct.
Very good. Do I have a second? Second from Representative Murphy. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Featherston.
Okay, so are we discussing Representative Riley's or the combined? I don't want to.
It's combined. So the motion on the table is my amendment, and he wants to add an addition to as per the motion. So we're discussing now the amendment as a whole with his language in it.
Thank you. My question to you, Mr. Chair, is has Keisha weighed in on this setting of a fee at all?
This is Keisha's adopted policy. So
$200?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the amendment, I think we're starting to stray pretty far from the original intent of the bill, which did pass out of the Senate 39-0. So I think we'd be safer consolidating. Also, I wouldn't want to do anything to undermine those smaller school sports that we're trying to support here. So that's a concern for me.
Representative Murphy.
I agree with previous representative, but it does say up to $200. I mean, they could just let them do it for nothing. So they're just putting a max on it.
Representative Sanders.
So I support the amendment that you offered this afternoon. Representative Riley, I can't support your conceptual amendment. Keisha, as the reviser has pointed out, doesn't receive appropriations for us. They do have expenses. They have to operate their agency. These fees are not unusual. Broadcasters are used to paying them. What this puts into law is that it can't exceed the current amount that's generally deemed acceptable. So I will be voting against your conceptual amendment, but I'll be voting in favor of the amendment offered by the chair.
Representative Hill and Representative Riley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a little confusing Acacia doesn't sit as, under the legislature, doesn't really sit under the State Board of Education, and yet they are using the activities that are sponsored by the state because we provide the funding for schools. How is it that they feel like that they can make money off of that? And they currently are not making money off of that. They currently are not taking those fees. So I guess I would suggest we just move that figure to 0 and allow it to be broadcast.
Certainly, once this amendment passes or fails, you're welcome to make that conceptual offer. Representative Riley.
And again, my conceptual amendment was only for those revenues and fees, just to be clear, not taking away from their profits, lots of profits that they might be making on those sub-state and state activities. I'm just want to move that $200 or whatever that figure is, those fees to the state general fund, those extra fees.
Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Revisor Long. Do we have an idea if Acacia operates at a profit margin at all after they pay their expenses for these games and the rest of Acacia's activities, and what might that be?
No, we do not have the information at this time as to Acacia's expenditures versus revenues for the past fiscal year.
Representative Estes.
I get the intent that you're trying to do here, but a thought occurs to me. If we're funding them through SGF, those fees kind of offset what they come back and ask us for when we go through the appropriations process. So I think at the end of the day, we run the risk of losing more money because we're giving them money, then we're saying, okay, now when you get this pot of money, you've got to spend money to send it back to us, and every time we move things back and forth, we're using resources and time. And I recall many years ago, a former register of deeds for Sedgwick County sitting down and calculating how much it cost, that it cost $84 every time Sedgwick County wrote a check. I don't know what that equivalent number would be to the state, but I think we could be losing money by moving money around. And then at the end of the day, Acacia would come back to us and say, well, now that we don't have this money, we need you to up your appropriation to us. So I would tend to leave status quo.
Representative Riley.
Well, if nothing else, I appreciate the discussion and clarifying that this organization is making money, and it's making monopolistic money because they are the ones that are controlling all these playoffs. And so therefore, it's true, we are not directly funding them, but I haven't seen lately a high school not go to a playoff. They are very much like committed to go to those playoffs. And so by doing that, they are creating their own monopoly of a sports entertainment is what they're doing by doing that. So I appreciate the discussion for us to look at, you know, where they, but my understanding is that that's where they're making their money. And now if they're asking to make more money on these kinds of agreements kind of thing, which actually are coming back and costing the high schools for those agreements, costing the broadcasters for these agreements, different things like that. You know, there is a little cycle here of what's going on with this funding here between schools and Acacia. So if my second would be willing to withdraw their second, I will withdraw my amendment.
All right, Representative Murphy agrees. We are back on the original amendment. Further discussion. Representative Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would this be the time to change that $200 to zero then? Or would it be, is that the appropriate time?
You could certainly do that conceptually. I would prefer we do that as a separate motion. So
Okay.
once we pass this amendment, that puts the amendment in, and then we can
Okay.
make a motion to reduce that 200 to zero.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Right. All right, with that, I move my amendment, and I look for a second from Representative Estes. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? The amendment passes. We're back on the bill. Representative Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would amend the motion that we change the 200 to zero. And so essentially it changes the wording to that there would be no compensation. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I talked a little bit about that this is actually, the public is funding schools. The public is funding sporting activities. And it doesn't seem right that an agency that is separate from us benefits from that financially. Furthermore, I think the people that would broadcast, especially if they're doing a video broadcast, are doing a service to the public in providing that. And so I don't feel that we should have to make them pay something to provide a service for, especially in our small communities. They're providing a service for people to be able to listen to games, to be able to see games, and it seems a little disingenuine to charge for that. And with that thought in mind, I would suggest the amendment.
We good on the language on that one, Jason Long?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if the amendment is to not allow KSHA to charge any fee for any broadcast audio or video, then I would recommend that the amendment strike all in line 22 of the bill regarding reasonable compensation, or I guess it could say reasonable compensation, except that no fee shall be charged for any audio or video broadcasts. Will that work? Okay.
Very good. We have a motion, a second discussion. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So how would this affect the arrangement that KSHA already has with the company we heard from during the hearing? Wouldn't it cause them to have to break their agreement?
No, this would not cancel their contract. This discusses extensions and renewals of that contract.
Okay.
Jason.
So then, would that mean that this amendment would only go into effect after that renewal comes up?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the amendment being discussed only applies to agreements with local broadcasters. It does not impact any exclusive national broadcasts.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Representative Featherston.
Sorry, I think I need a clarification. So will KSHA be able to make an agreement at a fee with these national broadcasters once this contract period is over?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the provision in question allows the association to require local broadcasters to enter into broadcast agreements, but those agreements would not allow the association to charge a fee for those broadcasts. It does not address the exclusive broadcast agreement that the association might have with a national corporation.
Sorry, so so KSHA could still have a contract with a national group after the current contract expires and charge a fee for that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Silas Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding of that then would be that the current organization that does have exclusive rights that prohibits local broadcasters from broadcasting the last of the games. I can't remember how many there were, but so it would have little to no effect on their ability to have that exclusive contract still, right? And I think that was one of the main issues, was that they wanted to be able to have access to that. And your amendment brought up that they can still have the audio access for free, but that they could still have that exclusive. I guess I'm asking for a clarification more than anything. That's, so it doesn't really affect the national broadcast. Okay. Thank you.
Representative Murphy.
The other thing we discussed a little bit when we talked about this before, there's a lot of local people get out there with their live feed and things like that, and I could see when if you're charging for some, that could kind of create some angst and all like that, and this sort of takes that away, and I appreciate that.
Further discussion on the amendment? With that, Representative, you can close.
I close the amendment.
All right, refresh my memory. Who seconded that motion? I believe it was Riley. Very good. You've heard the motion on the table to amend. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, believe that the motion carries. We're back on the bill. Further discussion on the bill. Representative Sanders.
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee votes on SB 13, that we pass it out as amended.
Second from Representative Hoheisel, our honored guest. Further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say, oh, sorry, Representative Younger, say whatever you want.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
They can have the contract. What they can't do is, with the amended language, is charge fees to local broadcasters come in and do audio per their current policy, and the addition of they can now no longer charge for the live streaming by local broadcasters. They can still have their contract.
I guess I'm just confusing because they're currently under contract, but we're amending that contract.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the bill applies to association entering into a new or a renewal of an existing exclusive broadcast agreement. It cannot impact the current existing exclusive broadcast agreement. So these provisions would apply if KSHA decides to renew their current existing exclusive broadcast agreement.
Be it at the end, whenever that contract expires.
That's correct. I believe they are currently 5-year agreements.
Representative Sanders.
And then it would no longer be an exclusive agreement.
No, at that point, then they would have to renegotiate provisions of the agreement for renewal to allow for these local broadcasts.
Right.
In terms of the bill.
So for now, it stays the same, but when renewal time comes around, they can't renegotiate an exclusive contract.
That's correct.
Okay.
Representative Younger, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this could be 5 years from now.
I believe, I'm not sure how many years we're into the current agreement. It'd be less than 5 years from now, I believe.
If memory serves me correct, we're in year 3 of a 5-year contract. Representative Featherston and Representative Silas Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really wanted to support this original bill because I have 2 recent state championships in my district, and I want their families and everybody to be able to have as much access as possible to those games. I'm a little concerned that we're interfering with businesses' ability to operate as business, and I'm not sure that's what the Education Committee is for. I feel like we might be interfering with commerce and like the free market, and that's making me a little woozy, which I really don't like because I want to support the bill on behalf of my schools.
Well, I think when you're discussing high school sports, I think you have to send that to the Education Committee, and I won't question leadership's decision to send it to this committee. I think based off the fact that it discusses high school sports, this is about local broadcasters being able to broadcast at their local high school. So I believe, not speaking for them, that would be why they sent it to us, because we're addressing high school sports and how they're broadcasted. So I certainly support the decision to send it to education, but I understand your concerns. Representative Estes.
I was just going to react to what you were thinking too, because if if these were two private businesses, I wouldn't entertain this at all, because I also don't want to interfere with the free market. But we are talking about a public good. And therefore, we get inserted into the equation whether we like it or not. So for me, that's just how I reconciled it, is KSHA doesn't exist except for us creating it through our laws, and that's why we end up having a role here.
Representative Silas Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wanted to, I guess I want to understand that. But KSHA doesn't receive appropriations from the legislature. Is that what we were saying earlier? Or,
Jason.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, KSHA is a nonprofit private organization whose membership consists of the high schools around from the 286 school districts in the state of Kansas who pay membership dues and who have seats on the governing board for the organization.
okay, I just want to make sure that wasn't something we were providing for them. That, but what I was going to say earlier is that I remember them saying that they are 3 years into a 5-year contract, but that now that we are at the 3-year point, they are able to renew now if they wanted to, or they could negotiate that at this point. So maybe
Until this bill becomes law, I believe they can, yes.
okay, thank you.
Further discussion. Representative Featherston.
Could we be reminded by the revisor how much money KSHA is making from the contract?
Yeah, I believe they did testify 45,000. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my concern becomes, why would they pay? Like, I feel like we're going to take that $45,000 away from KSHA and reduce the broadcast.
See, I see it the opposite. I don't think we're taking anything away from them financially, but we're actually extending the broadcast out to where the locals can get in. So I don't see it as that. I see it the complete opposite. KSHA can still do their contract. We just have to make sure the locals can still get in. So the current contract doesn't change. So as far as once this contract is over, to my knowledge, they're not going to be losing any money on this. And
Well, why would I, as a national broadcast corporation, pay money for something the legislature is requiring be provided free to my competition?
we're not telling them they can't have the contract. KSHA can still have the contract, do the broadcasting, do the marketing, all that stuff, just can't be exclusive. They got to let the locals in as well. That's what we're saying. Representative Younger, I believe. Okay, all right. Further discussion? Very good. With that, committee, all those in favor of passing out Senate Bill 13 favorably, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very good. If you want your yes vote recorded, raise your hand. Yes votes. So we got Riley, Representative Sanders, and Representative Murphy, all recorded yeses. Those who want their no vote recorded, raise your right hand. Representative Featherston and Representative Getz. And with that, it is the opinion of the chair that the bill passes as amended. Very good. With that, committee, tomorrow is a very special day. It is 3/21, National Down Syndrome Day, I believe. So we're going to have a special presentation tomorrow, I believe. So with that, we will see you tomorrow. Thank you for those who filled in. I appreciate it very much. With that, we're